You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Preparing for the PMI-ACP exam requires more than simply reading through study guides or memorizing definitions. The most effective systems of study are rooted in cognitive science, emphasizing how people learn, retain, and retrieve knowledge under pressure. The combination of spaced repetition, active recall, and structured practice provides a powerful foundation for converting agile knowledge into durable, exam-ready competence. These techniques ensure that information is not just temporarily accessible, but deeply encoded for long-term use. In this way, learners move beyond surface familiarity to true mastery, capable of applying principles in complex scenarios. The purpose of a study system is therefore not to cover material once, but to continuously revisit, test, and refine knowledge until it becomes second nature. This design aligns closely with the agile mindset itself: iterative progress, incremental learning, and constant adaptation based on feedback. At the heart of an effective study system is spaced repetition, a method that combats the natural forgetting curve. Human memory decays rapidly without reinforcement, but reviewing material at gradually increasing intervals significantly strengthens retention. The key is timing reviews before knowledge slips completely, ensuring that the act of recall refreshes and deepens memory traces. A practical way to implement this is through digital flashcard systems or decks organized by domain and difficulty. By tagging items and using scheduled intervals, learners focus on the areas most vulnerable to decay rather than wasting time on already solid concepts. For example, if a learner consistently forgets terminology from the delivery domain, those items will appear more often until they stabilize. This data-driven approach transforms review into a targeted process, ensuring that time is invested where it has the greatest impact. Complementing spaced repetition is active recall, which shifts emphasis from recognition to production. Reading notes or rewatching lectures may create the illusion of familiarity, but the exam requires generating answers in real time under pressure. Active recall exercises force learners to pull knowledge from memory, strengthening the pathways that support retrieval. For example, rather than rereading the definition of throughput, a learner might test themselves by explaining it out loud or writing it from scratch. This act of self-generation reveals gaps and builds resilience. Scenario-style prompts are particularly powerful, as they mimic the exam's decision-oriented framing. A question might describe a team facing blocked work and ask what should be prioritized. By practicing with such prompts, candidates rehearse the exact kind of judgment the exam demands, making the transition from study to test seamless. Interleaving is another technique that enhances learning by mixing topics rather than studying them in isolation. Instead of spending an entire session only on Scrum, a learner might alternate between Scrum, Kanban, and Lean, weaving in questions about leadership and product value. This creates desirable difficulty, training the brain to discriminate among concepts rather than relying on context cues. On the PMI-ACP exam, items are interwoven across frameworks and roles, so interleaving during study mirrors this reality. It prevents false confidence that arises when studying a topic in a neat block and forces learners to practice switching between domains fluidly. Just as agile teams must navigate shifting priorities, candidates benefit from the mental flexibility gained through interleaving. It is harder in the short term but results in stronger, more transferable learning that endures into the exam room. A crucial part of study refinement is keeping an error log. Rather than simply marking wrong answers, effective learners classify their misses to uncover patterns. For instance, they may discover that most errors come from misreading stems, confusing similar terms, or overlooking agile values in pressure-driven scenarios. By tagging errors by domain, concept, and distractor type, candidates can see where their weaknesses truly lie. This turns mistakes into data, guiding targeted remediation. For example, Frequent confusion between velocity and throughput indicates a vocabulary gap, while repeated failure on scenario items suggests a need for more situational practice. By engaging with errors systematically, learners embody the agile principle of inspecting and adapting. Each miss is not a setback but a signal pointing the way toward improvement, making preparation more efficient and intentional. Practice exams serve as both diagnostic tools and training grounds. They simulate the breadth of the blueprint, exposing learners to a variety of cognitive levels, from basic knowledge to applied judgment. Importantly, practice exams are not just about measuring progress, they are about guiding study. A disappointing score should not discourage, but instead highlight where to focus. For example, consistent weakness in product domain items may suggest the need to revisit backlog prioritization techniques or stakeholder engagement principles. Practice exams also build familiarity with the test's pacing and structure, reducing anxiety on exam day. Taken at regular intervals, they provide checkpoints that calibrate readiness. Rather than blindly studying everything equally, learners use practice results to fine-tune their plan, ensuring that energy is spent where it matters most for achieving a passing performance. Item review becomes more powerful when errors are classified into categories: knowledge, application, or judgment. A knowledge error may stem from forgetting a definition, an application error from misusing a tool, and a judgment error from selecting an option that ignores agile values under pressure. Identifying which type occurred allows for precise corrective action. Knowledge errors can be addressed with flashcards or repetition, application errors with case studies or worked examples, and judgment errors with scenario practice and reflection. Without such classification, learners risk treating all mistakes the same and wasting time on unfocused review. This taxonomy of error aligns with how agile teams conduct retrospectives, distinguishing between process, skill, and decision flaws. By approaching review in this structured way, candidates refine not just what they know, but how they apply it in real-world agile contexts. A strong pacing blueprint is essential for sustaining momentum throughout preparation. Candidates often underestimate how quickly exam dates arrive, leading to last-minute cramming. A backward-planned schedule, starting from the test date and working back to the present, ensures adequate time for coverage, review, and rest. Study blocks should be time-boxed to maintain focus, with planned windows for review and reflection. For example, a learner might schedule 90 minutes of active recall, followed by a 15-minute debrief and a short break. Building reflection into the plan ensures that insights are captured rather than lost. This disciplined pacing mirrors Agile's emphasis on time boxing, where work is constrained to force prioritization and delivery. A clear pacing blueprint keeps preparation realistic, sustainable, and less vulnerable to burnout or procrastination, ensuring steady progress rather than frantic last-minute effort. Break strategies are often overlooked, yet they play a critical role in sustaining performance. Cognitive fatigue sets in when the brain is forced to maintain intense concentration for long periods without relief. Short breaks, even just 5 minutes to stretch, walk, or breathe, allow for mental resets that preserve focus over multiple study sessions. At a broader level, longer recovery periods between major sessions prevent cumulative fatigue that erodes performance. For example, studying intensely for 6 hours straight may feel productive, but retention plummets as attention wanes. By contrast, 3 2-hour sessions with breaks yield better long-term results. Breaks should be seen not as wasted time, but as part of the study system itself. Just as agile teams include buffer time and slack to absorb variability, learners benefit from structured rest that keeps their mental systems operating at peak efficiency. An effective note system supports ongoing review by distilling key ideas into succinct, evergreen formats. Notes should not be exhaustive transcripts, but focused summaries that highlight definitions, heuristics, and pitfalls. Audio-first summaries are particularly useful, allowing learners to replay concepts during commutes or exercise. Notes function as anchors for rapid refresh, providing a compact reference when time is short. For instance, a one-page summary of agile estimation techniques can be reviewed quickly before a practice exam, reinforcing concepts without overwhelming detail. By investing in high-quality notes, learners create a personal knowledge base that remains useful even beyond the exam. The act of writing notes also strengthens encoding, transforming passive exposure into active learning. Ultimately, a streamlined note system ensures that learners always have an efficient way to reconnect with material, making preparation resilient to time constraints and disruptions. Vocabulary sweeps are another important layer of preparation. Agile and PMI terminology can be deceptively precise, with terms carrying specific meanings that distinguish one concept from another. A sweep involves systematically reviewing vocabulary, standardizing terms and synonyms to align with PMI's lexicon. For example, distinguishing between increment and iteration, or between velocity and throughput, is essential for correctly interpreting exam items. These sweeps reduce the risk of misinterpretation and ensure that candidates can respond with accuracy and confidence. Beyond the exam, vocabulary mastery enhances professional communication, enabling practitioners to collaborate effectively across teams and organizations. By internalizing terminology, learners gain not just test readiness but professional fluency, a skill that supports their credibility and effectiveness in real agile environments. Precision of language becomes both a test asset and a professional competency. Test simulations provide another powerful practice dimension. These involve replicating exam conditions as closely as possible, including timing, rules, and environment. By practicing under these constraints, learners reduce the shock of real test day and build confidence in their pacing and endurance. For instance, sitting for a 3-hour uninterrupted session with flagged reviews mirrors the actual PMIACP format. Simulations also surface practical issues, such as how a candidate responds to time pressure or how fatigue affects performance after the halfway point. By addressing these challenges in practice, learners prevent surprises during the real exam. Test simulations serve as dress rehearsals, ensuring that performance reflects genuine competence rather than artificial comfort. Just as agile teams use pilot runs to test solutions before full deployment, candidates use simulations to validate their readiness in realistic conditions. Managing cognitive load is essential for preventing burnout and ensuring quality learning. This means breaking material into manageable chunks and limiting work in process. For example, instead of tackling all agile frameworks in one session, a learner might focus on Scrum ceremonies, then Kanban metrics, before linking them together later. Chunking allows the brain to digest information without becoming overwhelmed. Work-in-process limits ensure that learners do not spread themselves too thin, starting many topics but mastering none. This mirrors Agile's emphasis on limiting work in progress to maintain flow and focus. By consciously managing cognitive load, candidates ensure that every study session builds lasting understanding rather than fleeting familiarity. The result is deeper learning and a more sustainable preparation journey, one that supports long-term retention and reduces stress. Weekly retrospectives close the loop on the study system, providing structured opportunities to inspect progress and adapt the plan. At the end of each week, learners can review metrics such as time spent, practice scores, and error patterns. They then decide what to keep, what to change, and what to intensify for the coming week. For example, if retrieval practice shows persistent weakness in stakeholder management, the next week might allocate additional sessions to that area. Retrospectives prevent drift, ensuring that study remains purposeful and responsive. This rhythm mirrors agile ceremonies like sprint reviews, where teams reflect and adapt to improve. By making retrospection a habit, candidates transform study from a static plan into a living process that evolves with their needs. This adaptability not only improves exam readiness, but also reinforces the agile mindset itself, turning preparation into practice. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. A well-designed study system begins with building a backlog aligned directly to the examination content outline. Just as agile teams organize work into backlogs prioritized by value and dependencies, candidates can break down preparation into manageable items. Each domain, task, and concept becomes an entry in the backlog, with study activities mapped to them. This transforms exam prep into a project, giving it structure and transparency. Items can be prioritized based on impact and personal weaknesses. For example, if delivery has the heaviest weight and the learner is weakest there, it rises to the top. Prerequisite relationships also matter. Certain concepts, like understanding value-driven delivery, may need to be mastered before tackling advanced stakeholder scenarios. By treating study as a backlog-driven effort, candidates adopt the same discipline they will apply in agile environments, ensuring coverage is systematic rather than random. Prioritization heuristics make the backlog actionable. Not all tasks offer equal return on time invested, so learners must weigh where to focus. A useful lens is score movement per hour. How much a given activity can realistically improve performance. For example, mastering high-frequency themes such as backlog refinement may yield bigger gains than perfecting niche techniques rarely tested. At the same time, learners must balance this against their personal gap profile. If someone is already strong in mindset but weak in leadership, devoting energy to leadership may shift their performance more. This balancing act mirrors product backlog prioritization, where teams weigh value, risk, and effort. By applying similar reasoning, candidates ensure that study hours are spent where they drive the greatest impact, rather than defaulting to what feels comfortable or familiar. Scheduling adjustments keep the study plan efficient and responsive. Not every topic needs the same review interval. Fragile knowledge, such as newly learned frameworks or confusing terminology, benefits from compressed review cycles to reinforce memory before it fades. Stable knowledge, such as familiar Scrum roles, can be stretched out to longer intervals, freeing time for weaker areas. This creates a dynamic rhythm of study that preserves efficiency without risking decay. The principle is similar to agile release planning. Features at higher risk or importance are tackled earlier and more often, while stable components require less attention. By deliberately compressing and stretching intervals, candidates ensure their energy is applied precisely, sustaining momentum without drowning in redundant review. The schedule thus adapts naturally to the learner's evolving proficiency. Some concepts serve as thresholds, critical gateways whose mastery underpins success across multiple domains. For example, misunderstanding the concept of value delivery or empirical process control can undermine performance in questions spanning product, delivery, and leadership. Identifying such threshold topics early allows for deep reinforcement before moving on. These become the keystone concepts, worth disproportionate investment because they unlock understanding elsewhere. Learners can flag these topics during practice exams when errors cascade across multiple domains. Prioritizing them in study ensures stability in the foundation upon which more complex reasoning is built. This mirrors agile architecture principles, where certain components demand extra care because failures ripple outward. By recognizing threshold topics, candidates elevate their preparation from surface-level review to strategic reinforcement, safeguarding against wide-scale misunderstanding on exam day. Confidence calibration is another essential element of the system. Many learners fall prey to the illusion of competence, where recognition feels like mastery. To counter this, study routine should track not only accuracy but also speed and recovery. For instance, answering correctly on the second try may mask fragility, while hesitating for minutes reveals lack of fluency. By recording these patterns, learners calibrate their self-assessment, learning when confidence is warranted and when it is misplaced. This is especially critical on an exam where pacing matters as much as correctness. Calibration ensures that study reflects reality, not wishful thinking. The process is much like a team using velocity metrics, not to inflate performance, but to gain a grounded view of actual capacity. For candidates, honest calibration prevents overconfidence and highlights areas needing further reinforcement. Scenario pattern libraries offer a practical way to streamline reasoning. Many exam questions share structural similarities, asking for the best next step or the most likely cause of an issue. By cataloging these patterns and practicing responses, learners develop templates for thinking under time pressure. For example, recognizing that best next step questions usually demand incremental, value-driven choices prevents overcomplicating answers. Similarly, most likely cause prompts often test diagnostic reasoning tied to agile metrics. Building a library of such patterns reduces cognitive load on exam day, allowing candidates to focus energy on context rather than structure. It is similar to how developers use design patterns, not to limit creativity, but to provide proven approaches when facing common challenges. For learners, scenario pattern libraries create mental shortcuts that preserve clarity and speed when pressure is high. Fatigue prevention plays a critical role in sustaining effective preparation. Long hours and inconsistent routines drain cognitive resources, leading to diminished returns. Instead, learners should adopt consistent schedules with clear boundaries. Sleep hygiene is particularly important, as consolidation of learning occurs during rest. Without sufficient sleep, even the best study strategies falter. Similarly, overextending sessions without breaks invites burnout. Candidates should treat their mental energy as a renewable but limited resource, much like a team's capacity in agile planning. Protecting that resource ensures that every study session is productive and that cumulative progress builds rather than erodes. By preventing fatigue, learners not only preserve health but also align with the sustainable pace principle of agility. Progress should be steady, not frantic. In exam preparation, sustainability often proves more powerful than intensity. Selecting the right resources ensures that study remains aligned to the exam's intent. Not all question banks or guides are created equal. The most effective resources reflect the examination content outline and measure applied capability rather than trivia. High-quality practice questions mirror the exam's scenario framing and emphasize judgment over rote recall. Outlines and references should be up to date, as agile practices evolve and PMI periodically revises its content. Learners must also beware of unauthorized or overly simplistic materials, which risk misalignment. Choosing the right tools mirrors Agile's principle of working with the highest value features resources that deliver real impact. Just as teams avoid gold plating and focus on what customers need, learners should filter resources to ensure time spent translates into exam readiness. This curation prevents distraction and maximizes learning efficiency. Accountability mechanisms help candidates stay on track in the midst of busy schedules and shifting priorities. Progress logs, whether simple spreadsheets or digital trackers, provide visibility into what has been studied and what remains. Regular status reviews, perhaps weekly or bi-weekly, force learners to confront slippage early. External accountability, such as study partners or mentors, adds another layer of discipline, as reporting progress to others heightens commitment. These mechanisms parallel agile transparency tools, such as information radiators, which make progress and obstacles visible to all stakeholders. For candidates, accountability transforms study from a private, easily postponed task into a structured, measurable commitment. By externalizing progress, learners create motivation loops that sustain momentum, ensuring that the study plan remains a living, executed strategy rather than a forgotten intention. Exam day rehearsal addresses logistics, reducing the risk of external factors undermining cognitive performance. This includes planning travel to a test center, checking identification, or confirming online system requirements. Candidates should rehearse environment setup, minimizing noise and distractions. Even small uncertainties, like how long it takes to log in, can increase stress if left unaddressed. Rehearsing these elements preserves mental energy for the exam itself. The principle mirrors Agile's focus on readiness, removing obstacles so teams can deliver smoothly. For candidates, eliminating logistical surprises means their attention stays where it matters, interpreting questions, managing time, and applying Agile principles. Treating exam day as another sprint, complete with preparation and risk management, ensures that nothing outside the learner's control derails months of effort. Preparedness extends beyond knowledge. It includes the environment that supports peak performance. As the exam date approaches, study transitions into a consolidation phase. This is the time to shift focus from expanding breadth to stabilizing depth. Targeted reviews reinforce fragile topics. Mixed sets simulate the unpredictable blend of domains, and high-yield summaries strengthen recall speed. New content intake should taper off, preventing overload. Instead, learners invest in sharpening fluency and confidence with what they already know. This mirrors Agile's emphasis on stabilizing before release, ensuring that what is delivered is solid rather than half-baked. For candidates, consolidation brings clarity. The goal is not to know everything, but to be reliably competent across key areas. By the final stretch, study becomes less about discovery and more about polish, preparing the mind to perform smoothly under pressure. The study plan risk register adds resilience to preparation. Life disruptions, illness, work demands, or personal obligations can derail even the best-laid plans. By listing potential obstacles, identifying mitigations, and defining triggers for change, learners create a proactive buffer. For example, if practice scores drop due to missed sessions, the trigger might be reallocating more time to core domains. This adaptive planning mirrors project risk management, where risks are logged, monitored, and acted upon. Rather than reacting in crisis, learners adjust deliberately, maintaining momentum even when setbacks occur. This not only sustains progress but also reinforces Agile thinking. Uncertainty is inevitable, but preparation includes planning for disruption. By embedding risk management into the study system, candidates demonstrate the same foresight that Agile practitioners use in managing projects. Finally, ethical study practices sustain the integrity of both a candidate and the certification. While the temptation to seek unauthorized content exists, using such materials undermines fairness and credibility. Instead, learners should embrace aggressive but ethical preparation, practicing extensively with legitimate resources, pushing themselves to mastery, and respecting the standards of the credential. Ethical preparation not only preserves PMI's trust in the certification, but also aligns with the values of professionalism that Agile emphasizes. Just as Agile teams commit to transparency and integrity, candidates should hold themselves to the same bar. The journey of preparation is not just about passing an exam, but about embodying the principles of the profession. Ethical study, therefore, becomes part of the learning itself, shaping not only exam outcomes, but professional identity. The synthesis of these strategies highlights how study becomes a disciplined, iterative process. Spaced repetition ensures retention, active recall builds resilience, and practice exams calibrate readiness. Pacing and breaks sustain performance, while accountability and retrospectives keep the plan adaptive. Risk management prepares for disruptions, and ethical norms protect the integrity of the journey. Together, these practices form an integrated system that mirrors the very principles of agility, iterative learning, continuous improvement, and value-driven focus. For candidates, adopting this system transforms exam prep from a daunting task into a structured, purposeful endeavor. Success becomes not a matter of chance, but the predictable result of deliberate practice, disciplined reflection, and sustained effort, all anchored in proven learning science. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.